Valentine's Day, 2007. Snow had been falling for 2 days. The town looked untouched. Streets lay empty. Houses rested and breathed softly through chimney smoke. With the delicate fall of every flake, sound seemed to have been gently muted. By the time anyone realized the noise, the snow had already done its work. Something precious was taken from this town, and what it left was a story no one wanted to read twice. A bridge marked by rose petals, silence where there should have been answers, and the lingering sense that love had crossed a line it couldn't return from. The Day of Love has a way of pretending everything is simple: candy, stuffed animals, roses, and promises wrapped in red ribbon. But beneath that surface, love can be just as hollow as these gifts, and like roses, can only survive with tender care. Love can be blissful and carefree, but can also be something that watches, something that waits. It began with an apologetic text from a no-name number, an invitation for reconciliation that felt immediate, received by a heart half available. Affection flurried into rivalry, concern frozen into surveillance. Someone was following the rules of romance too closely. Someone was rewriting them entirely. Bonnie's Creek would wake up after that day. Roses would never mean the same again, and neither would devotion. This isn't a story about romance. It's about what obsession looks like when it believes it's love, and the quiet trail it leaves behind when it turns deadly. Welcome to Behind the Yellow Tape. I'm Mimi, and here we share some of the most spine-chilling, gut-stirring, mysterious crime stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. So if mystery and crime is your cup of tea, then you'll definitely get your fill here. We upload every Wednesday at 6:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you love a midweek dose of suspense, whether from your favorite seat, the car, before bed, or during your favorite activity, then leave a like to help build the algorithm. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss an upload. Now, let's take a step behind the yellow tape. The bridge in Bonnie's Creek was usually loud in the afternoons. It was the neighborhood kids' favorite hangout. They'd lean over the railing and throw rocks into the creek. Parents tolerated it because nothing ever happened there. That snowy Valentine's morning, 3 middle school-aged children crossed the bridge on their way to school. 1 girl, 2 boys. Their boots slipping on packed snow, horse-playing as most kids do. None of them noticed anything at first. Then, one of the boys stopped. A shoe was sticking out of the snow near the railing. Lost shoes weren't unusual. People would leave them to walk down and wade the creek all the time. But it was winter. No one could make it down the steep, snow-covered hill. The shoe wasn't tossed aside or half buried by accident. It was upright, the toe angled slightly upward as if someone had placed it there before the snowfall finished covering everything else. There were rose petals peeking ever so slightly from under the snow where the shoe was. Full of curiosity, the boy picked up the shoe just before the edge of the steep hill began. He saw a corner of dark fabric beneath the snow as well. The child carefully pulled the fabric until it emerged, a red scarf. The boy and his 2 friends peered over the bridge rail to a sight no child should ever witness. The creek had frozen, and on that creek, a snow-covered figure laid motionless on top of it. The figure was the body of Elena Arkansas. Bonnie's Creek wasn't the kind of place where a death like that could be absorbed quietly. By midday, people knew her name. By evening, they knew where she lived. And by morning, everyone had an opinion about how it must have happened. An accident, a slip, a wrong step on ice. Elena was well known in her community for her warm heart and giving spirit. She was introverted and private, but did what it took for her presence to be known. Despite her angelic persona, she had a secret life that would soon shock everyone. Elena was living in a double romance. She shared her heart with 2 men who had made themselves part of her life, both insistent, both persistent. Marcus Hale was a masculine, flamboyant, and dramatic personal trainer. His charm always on display. They had an on and off relationship. He was a storm she'd weathered over and over. And Jonah Reed, an IT major, quiet, precise, the kind of man who left gifts and letters, a man who was able to have hard conversations without raising his voice. She cared for them both dearly, but couldn't bring herself to choose commitment. The only thing they had in common was flowers. They both knew roses were Alina's kryptonite. Alina always stirred early before the town's slumber broke. Her home smelled faintly of citrus candles and freshly brewed tea. She was the type of woman to always take her time, the type to leave minimal space to make mistakes. But as we all know, even the sharpest knife loses its power over time. Valentine's Day for Alina had always felt less like a holiday and more like a day of predictability and performance. It zoned in on happiness, yet beneath it there was always unnecessary tension. That morning, at 6:43 a.m., her phone buzzed. This was outside of both of her lovers' expected time frame, but not uncommon. A message from a number with no name lit the screen. "I need to explain everything. Please meet me." The text felt urgent, almost desperate. She stared at the words, then placed her phone on the counter. She blew it off as Marcus texting her from another number to apologize for the argument they had last week. She'd blocked him. She was trying to come to terms that their back-and-forth relationship was wearing thin. At 9:29 a.m., Alina heard what she thought was a knock at the door. Expecting to see one of her lovers, she opened it only to be met with the cold, dry wind brushing her face and ankles. She frowned, shaking her head. She closed the door and leaned against it, gripping her robe. Was it paranoia or intuition? Jonah hadn't texted her that morning, but that didn't mean he wasn't thinking about her. He was always so tender, so smooth. He rarely rushed things. He was confident and comfortable with his presence in her life. Unlike Marcus, it seemed as if he never carried a fear of losing her. Alina assumed she would hear from him later, a message, careful and polite, asking if she had time to meet. He always asked. He never demanded. Alina knew he was the better contender. She hadn't told him about Marcus. She told herself there would be time. There always seemed to be time. 2 more hours passed, and as to be expected, Jonah asked to meet her for dinner at her favorite place. She decided she would tell him about Marcus over dessert. Another text from the unknown number came in just after 3 o'clock. The bridge, Bonnie's Creek, 4 p.m. It has to be now. Please. The tone was desperate and final. It had to be Marcus. Who else would ask her to their old spot? She sent a lie to Jonah. Something came up. Can we push back to 8:30? His reply was instant. Of course, followed by a rose emoji. That final yes to a quiet dinner was the last promise she would ever make. The unnamed text she succumbed to as a lover's plea was not the path to reconciliation, but a direct line to her final Valentine's Day. Detective Silas Vance took over the case. He felt like it was unspooling. He had a death that wasn't an accident, a staged scene, a prime suspect with an alibi he couldn't break, and a phone record that led to a cheap pay-as-you-go phone bought with cash. The pressure from the town was low and consistent. They wanted the stormy boyfriend to be the answer. But Vance had seen the look in Marcus Hale's eyes. It wasn't the rage of a killer. It was the tired defeat of a man who'd finally lost a long fight. The evidence against Marcus was a house of cards, and the proof was a strong wind. Vance turned his attention to the other man in Alina's life, the quiet one. Jonah Reed sat in the interview room, his hands folded neatly on the table. He was helpful. He spoke of Alina in a soft, respectful tone, painting a picture of a gentle, evolving connection. He expressed a polite sort of grief, the kind that seemed to inconvenience him, but he bore it with patient indignity. He mentioned that Alina had seemed a little distant lately, maybe preoccupied. He assumed it was work. Did she ever mention being afraid of anyone? Vance asked. A stranger hanging around? An old boyfriend who wouldn't let go? Jonah shook his head slowly, a small, thoughtful frown on his face. No, nothing like that. She was a very contained person. She handled her own business. He paused. Although, she did mention once that Marcus could be a lot, that he felt like a weight sometimes, but she never said she was scared of him. It was the perfect nudge, just enough to point towards Marcus without seeming like he was pointing at all. But Vance had learned to listen to the spaces between words. Jonah's story was too clean. His composure too unbroken. Grief, even polite grief, has cracks. Jonah's mask had none. He was let go for the moment, but the unfinished business between the two of them had yet to unfold. The break came from the tech team. The disposable phone had been purchased at a big box store on the edge of town. The store's own security footage was too grainy to be definitive, but a city traffic camera at the intersection nearby had captured a car matching Jonah's sedan turning into the plaza around the time of the purchase. It was a thread. Vance got a warrant for Jonah's computer and phone records. What they found was not a smoking gun, but a blueprint for a prison. Jonah, using his skill, had found a way to mirror Elena's text messages to a secondary device. He had known about Marcus for months. He had read every fight, every makeup, every intimate detail. He had also at some point fixed a glitch on Marcus's phone, installing a hidden app that gave him the same window into Marcus's life. He hadn't been a boyfriend. He had been a curator of their relationship, studying it from the inside. Next, Vance pulled the records for Jonah's car, the built-in navigation system that pinged to its location. He mapped the coordinates for the weeks leading up to Valentine's Day. The dots clustered around Elena's home, her workplace, and her favorite running path. They formed tight, repetitive loops late at night, a pattern of watchfulness. His personal cell phone records confirmed it, his signal bouncing off the same towers as Elena's day after day. The disposable phone signal came from the area near the Bonnie's Creek Bridge at 10:14 a.m. on Valentine's Day. Jonah's personal phone, according to his records, was at his apartment all morning. He had left it behind. Vance had the pieces. This means the mirrored text, the hidden app, the opportunity. He was there without his own phone, and a motive slowly taking shape. Not a crime of passion, but one of cold, furious possession. The rose petals on the bridge were no longer a romantic accident. They were part of his set dressing, the final prop in a show only he was directing. This time, the interview room felt smaller, the air heavier. Vance didn't start with the bridge, he started with the rain. You care about the details, Jonah. You're a precise guy. Tell me about the weather on the 22nd of last month, a Tuesday. Jonah blinked, thrown. I don't recall. It was a month ago. It was raining, Vance said, sliding a photo from the traffic camera across the table. It showed Jonah's car, clear as day, parked down the street from Elena's apartment at 11:47 p.m. Hard to forget sitting in your car in the rain for over an hour. Were you waiting for her to come home or just watching her windows? Jonah's composure developed its first hairline fracture. That's not me. That could be anyone's car. We pulled your car's computer, Vance continued, his voice flat. It remembers every trip. It remembers driving past her office 14 times in 10 days. It remembers idling at the park where she jogged. Vance placed another sheet down, a map littered with dots. This is you, Jonah. This is you wrapping your life around hers until there was no space left for air. The color drained from Jonah's face. The patient, understanding man began to slip, revealing the anger he kept so carefully buried. You don't understand what we had. I understand you read every text she ever sent to Marcus Hale. I understand you listened in on his phone calls. You knew he was going to break up with her that morning. And you knew that when she got a text from his number right after asking to meet, she would go. You set the stage, and then you showed up to play the only other part. You have no proof of that, Jonah snapped. his quiet voice finally raising. The phone used to send that text, Vance said, leaning forward, was bought at the same store you visited. It was active near the bridge when she died. And it was found this morning, wiped clean, but not clean enough, buried in a planter outside your apartment building. It was a bluff. The phone hadn't been found, but Jonah didn't know that. The break in his composure flatlined. Jonah's shoulders slumped, not in defeat, but in a kind of terrible, weary recognition. The story began to spill out. He admitted sending the no-name text message posing as Marcus. He continued on about how much he loved Elena and the life he planned for them in his mind. He confessed that Marcus was a splinter in their perfect picture, and when he saw the text between he and Elena about meeting the day before Valentine's Day, Jonah saw his chance and took it. He knew Marcus was planning to come to Elena's house to break up with her because he felt guilty for being such a strain on her life. Jonah's intent was to remove that splinter. He would be her hero. According to Jonah, on the day of the murder, the wind was fierce. He spoke of the dark red scarf and how it blew between them like a reminder of the much resented splinter. Marcus had given it to Elena some time ago. She wore it often. As Elena walked to the bridge, she saw a figure. She called out for Marcus, but to her surprise, the figure turned around and Jonah's face appeared. He met her at the bridge with her favorite bouquet of roses. Stunned, she froze as the raging gust scattered the petals along the snow. Jonah? What are you doing here? The text, I thought it was... Her words left her lips in a puff of confused and terrified steam. Thought it was Marcus? Jonas finished her sentence. Taking a step closer, he smiled. I've known about him longer than you've known, Elena. This time, I needed it to be me. In a panic, Elena explained that she and Marcus were finished and that she was going to tell Jonah about their relationship at dinner. He didn't seem fazed. He was sweet and calm as he always was. When Elena confirmed she and Marcus were no longer seeing each other, he pulled her into a hug and spun her around. It was supposed to be a moment of relief, renewal, and comfort. But feeling her in his arms, knowing she had let another man touch her, sent a hot white blindness through him. He didn't think of the railing being just waist high, but only of erasing the contamination. He shoved her. Elena collided with the rail and began to slip, losing one of her shoes. Frantically, she attempted to regain traction, but to catch her balance was almost impossible on the slippery iron bridge. Elena fell over the railing and was lucky enough to grab onto a small piece of ledge, her gloves scraping, her eyes filled with a terror Jonah had never seen. In an instant, the blindness that had taken over Jonah was replaced by a cascading regret of what he'd done. He lunged to grab her, to pull her back. His fingers were hanging on mercifully to her beloved red scarf. Despite his attempt to save her life, the delicate wet fabric slipped through his grasp. He watched the love of his life fall to her death. He watched the beautiful bouquet of roses blow away from where she stood. In disbelief, Jonah dropped the scarf. An unexplainable emptiness filled his body. He left the scarf and placed the shoe in an upright position in which it was found later. He then walked away, letting the snow cover his footprints. Jonah Reed was arrested at the precinct for the murder of Elena Arkansas and was sentenced to life in prison. The car data, the phone hacking, and surveillance evidence were all enough to bring him to an overwhelming confession. Marcus Hale left Bonnie's Creek a week after the funeral. He was free, but he carried the heavier weight. The knowledge that his heart and his entire relationship was not only shared, but had been monitored and ultimately used as a catalyst for murder. For Detective Vance, the quiet of the town felt different after the arrest. It wasn't peaceful anymore. The snow melted, revealing the muddy ground beneath. Some of the rose petals still remained. Bonnie's Creek was different. The bridge was just a bridge. The creek was now for eyes only. Kids no longer played there, and parents no longer tolerated it. The murder of Elena Arkansas took the community by storm. A cold, breathtaking storm. From this story, we find a portrait of three kinds of love: each flawed enough to be fatal. Alina's was a selfish love that refused to choose, leaving a wound for obsession to fester in. Marcus was a bold, draining love that burned itself out. But Jonah's love was possessive, jealous, and disguised as devotion. A quiet, patient lie that watched, waited, and ultimately killed to own what it could not have. The final lesson is simple. Not every quiet heart is a gentle one. Until next time, I'm Mimi, and this has been A Step Behind the Yellow Tape.